The store was packed. A sea of faces, all desperate, all frenzied. It was Black Friday, and everyone seemed to have forgotten that we were supposed to be celebrating the holidays. Instead, we were all caught in a mad dash for discounted items, pushing past each other like animals in a cage. But I wasn't like the rest of them. I wasn't running for the last pair of headphones or the discounted flat-screen TV. I was just trying to survive. I had come to the store to meet up with a friend, but the place was so chaotic that I couldn't even get a hold of her. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to block out the biting chill that had somehow seeped into the store, despite the warmth of the crowded bodies all around me. There was something off, though, something in the air. A strange feeling that made my skin crawl, like I wasn't just in a store anymore. It felt like I had crossed over into something darker, something wrong. I had made my way to the electronics section, figuring that I'd find her there since that's where we had planned to meet. But as I walked past the aisles, I saw people, and something about their faces unsettled me. They weren't just looking for deals anymore. They were staring into space, eyes glazed over, like they were in a trance. I thought it was just me. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the crowd had finally gotten to me. But the more I looked, the more I saw. The weirdness was spreading. At first, it was just the distant gaze of a few people. But then it was more. There were people standing completely still in the aisles, not moving, just staring blankly ahead. They weren't even blinking. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I tried to shake it off. It's just stress, I told myself. The chaos of the crowds is making me paranoid. But then, I saw her. My friend. The one I had come to meet. She was standing in the middle of the electronics aisle, but she wasn't looking at the TVs like I'd expected. She wasn't moving. Her face was pale, almost gray, and her eyes were wide, unblinking. The air around her felt colder. My breath caught in my throat as I moved toward her, trying to call out to her, but no words came. It was like my voice had been stolen. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and as my fingers brushed her skin, I felt a sharp, cold jolt, like touching ice. She didn't react. Not even a twitch. I turned her around, desperate to get her attention, but when I looked into her eyes, I knew instantly that she wasn't the same. Her pupils were dilated, her mouth hanging open in a soft gasp, but she wasn't breathing. Before I could say anything, a shrill scream erupted from the back of the store. I jumped back, my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I whipped my head toward the sound, and in the distance, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A man. Tall, with a thin frame, wearing a black jacket and a white mask. His eyes were wide open, but not human, black pits of nothingness. His mouth stretched unnaturally wide, too wide, as if his face was ready to rip apart. The crowd had started to panic. People were pushing past each other, tripping over themselves to get away, but no one was moving toward the exit. They were moving deeper into the store. Toward him. Toward the masked man. It was like he had some power over them, pulling them toward him with an invisible force. My heart hammered in my chest as I stumbled back, trying to get away, but the people were moving like a tide, pushing me with them. I could barely keep my footing. Then, I heard the whispers. They weren't loud at first. They were faint, like the voices of people murmuring in a faraway corner. But as I looked around, I realized that everyone was hearing them. The whispers came from everywhere. From the shelves, from the floor, from the walls. The sound was growing louder, shifting between voices, like a chorus of distorted murmurs that filled the air with a sickening tension. "Get out," one whisper hissed. "Stay, you're not leaving," Another one whispered back, much darker, like a warning. I tried to move, but my legs felt heavy, like I was wading through thick mud. The crowd was now more like a wave, and it was pushing me toward the back of the store, toward where the masked figure stood. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened. I looked at my friend, still standing motionless, her eyes now reflecting the same deep, terrifying void I had seen in the man's eyes. And then, the lights flickered. At first, I thought it was just the overload of electricity with all the lights in the store. But then the lights went out completely. The whole store was plunged into darkness. Panic surged through the crowd. I could hear people screaming now, their voices high-pitched, frantic. And then I heard the sound of something, someone, moving in the dark. It wasn't footsteps. It was something else. Like a dragging noise, like the sound of a body being pulled across the floor. I stumbled forward, my hands outstretched, trying to find something, anything to hold on to. My breath was coming in short bursts now. I could hear the whispers again, but this time they were closer. Right behind me. "Don't go," one voice whispered. "Stay with us," another cooed. I turned around quickly, but I didn't see anyone. It was only darkness, suffocating and thick. The whispers seemed to come from every direction, each one tugging at my mind, pulling me in. And then, just as I was about to scream, the lights flickered back on. For a moment, everything seemed still. The crowd had gone silent. But when my eyes adjusted to the light, I saw it, ***. The masked man was standing in the middle of the store, but now, he wasn't alone. There were others. More figures, all wearing the same black clothing, all wearing the same white masks. They stood motionless, staring at me, their heads tilting in unison, like a flock of birds about to descend. And then, without warning, they moved. Not in the way a person moves. No, it was unnatural. They shifted, swayed, their limbs jerking at odd angles. They were coming toward me, their faces still blank, empty. And the whispers grew louder. More voices joined in. I could barely hear myself think. "Come closer, you can't escape." I backed away, but it was too late. The aisle was closing in on me. I could feel the cold breath on my neck, like someone was standing just behind me, but I couldn't turn around. The air felt thick, heavy, pressing in on me. The walls of the store felt like they were closing in, and the figures kept coming, surrounding me. I could hear the shuffle of their feet, the eerie scrape of their shoes on the tile floor. "You're next." The voice was louder now. Clearer. Right behind me. I turned around quickly, but all I saw was darkness. The shadows had swallowed the store, the shelves, the crowd. It was just me now. And them. And their eyes. And the whispers. They were everywhere. My skin crawled, my heart raced, and I knew, deep down, somewhere deep inside, that I wasn't going to make it out of this store alive. And then the lights went out again. To be continued. The lights flickered, and then, darkness. For a moment, everything was quiet. Too quiet. My heart was pounding in my chest, my breath ragged, as I stood frozen in the aisle. The whispers had stopped. The movement, the unsettling shuffle of footsteps, had ceased. All that remained was the sound of my own panicked breathing and the eerie silence that swallowed the store. I reached out, my hand trembling, desperate to touch anything familiar, but the air felt wrong, like it was thick with something unseen, something pressing in on me from all sides. And then, a sound, a soft scraping noise. It started far away, like the drag of something heavy across the floor, but it was getting closer. Closer. It was moving through the store, the sound echoing in the stillness, like claws scraping across tile. I spun around, trying to see in the thick blackness, but there was nothing. The figures, the masked ones, had disappeared. The aisle seemed to stretch out endlessly in every direction, a labyrinth of shadows, and I had no idea where to go. I tried to call out. My voice caught in my throat, like something was choking me from the inside. There was no sound. No reply. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence, the deep void around me. And then, I felt it. A hand. Cold. Ice cold. It brushed against my arm, and I gasped, the breath ripped from my lungs. My body froze, a bolt of icy fear shooting through me. The hand wasn't human. It was too cold, too stiff, its touch like stone. I turned quickly, spinning around to face whatever was behind me, but there was nothing. Just the darkness. Just the emptiness. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but all I could think was that I needed to move. I needed to run. I stumbled forward, my feet tripping over the uneven floor, but I couldn't see anything. The aisles were filled with shadows, shadows that moved on their own, creeping along the edges of the shelves, slithering into corners. The air was thick now, like a suffocating fog, and I could barely breathe. I pushed my way through the aisles, bumping into the shelves, my hands scraping along the cold metal as I tried to navigate. My pulse was hammering in my throat. I could still feel the cold hand on my arm, the sensation of something pulling at me, dragging me back. I could hear the whispers again, but they were louder now. Closer, they sounded like they were inside my head, echoing in my skull, speaking in voices that weren't mine. And then, I saw it. A figure. It was standing at the end of the aisle, in the flickering shadows, barely visible but unmistakable. It was tall, unnaturally tall, and its body was twisted, bent in strange, unnatural angles. Its face was completely blank, no eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, featureless surface, like a mask of polished bone. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring at me, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. The air grew colder still, and I could feel it, feel an asterisk, pulling me toward it. My feet wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, unable to tear my eyes away from the figure. Something in its presence made my chest tighten, my breath quicken, like it was draining me, sucking away my will to fight. I tried to scream, to run, but the sound wouldn't come. My legs were frozen in place, like the very ground beneath me had become a prison. "You're not leaving," the voice whispered again, but this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was many, all speaking at once, filling the air with their distorted, hollow words. The figure took a slow step toward me. Each movement was jerky, unnatural, like it was moving through water, its limbs bending at strange angles. Another step. The floor creaked under its weight, but there was no sound. It moved with a strange grace, like a puppet on invisible strings. I tried to back away, but it was no use. My body wouldn't obey. I was trapped in this living nightmare, unable to escape. The figure took another step, and then another, its long, spindly limbs reaching out toward me, its featureless face still locked on mine. "Come closer," it whispered, its voice filling my mind, echoing with an impossible depth. "You can't leave." I could feel its cold presence closing in on me, feel the air shift, feel the weight of its gaze pressing into me. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. The walls seemed to close in around me, the shadows stretching toward me, hungry, reaching for me. But then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure stopped. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The cold air hit me like a slap to the face as I bolted toward the window, desperate to escape. Every step felt like it was pulling me deeper into the madness. My body felt numb, as if the fear had paralyzed me from the inside out. I could hear the whispers again, growing louder, surrounding me. The shadows shifted, moving in and out of the corners of my vision, like they were trying to swallow me whole. The light at the end of the aisle, the light that was supposed to be my salvation, was flickering now, barely visible, as if it were struggling to stay alive in the storm of terror that had overtaken the store. The window, it was close, but the closer I got to it, the more the darkness seemed to push back. The air felt thick and oppressive, like I was running through molasses, each movement slower than the last. I reached the window, my hand trembling as I reached for the frame. The glass was cold to the touch, freezing almost, and yet I could feel the heat of something alive just beyond the surface. I looked outside. What I saw made my stomach churn. The world was wrong. It wasn't the bustling parking lot I had expected, the familiar streets I thought I knew. Instead, there was only an endless, twisted expanse of dark trees, their limbs bending at impossible angles, like grotesque fingers reaching toward the sky. The ground outside was cracked, dry, as if it hadn't seen rain in centuries. And then, I saw it. A figure. A person, or what used to be a person, was standing in the middle of the cracked earth, motionless. Its skin was gray, mottled, and stretched taut across its bones. Its eyes were wide open, black as coal, and its mouth hung open in a grotesque grin. But what made my blood run cold wasn't the figure itself, it was the way it stared at me. Like it knew me. Like it was waiting for me. I gasped, stumbling back from the window, heart racing in my chest. The whispers became louder, more insistent, like a chorus of voices rising in unison. "You can't escape," they taunted. Asterisk, "you belong to us now." Asterisk, I had to get out. I had to find a way to escape this nightmare before it consumed me completely. But how? The store, asterisk, this place, asterisk, wasn't real. None of it was real. It couldn't be. The shadows, the whispers, the figures, they were all part of some twisted, supernatural nightmare, and I had somehow stumbled into it. I could feel it closing in on me, suffocating me with every breath I took. I turned away from the window, my eyes frantically scanning the room. The shelves were closing in, the aisles bending and shifting, and the darkness in the corners of the room seemed to be alive, writhing like something that was too big to fit in a store. I couldn't see the door anymore. The entrance was gone. The walls had changed, warped into something unrecognizable. There was no way out. There was no way out. I backed up, my feet stumbling over the cluttered floor, and bumped into something cold. My heart skipped a beat, and I spun around, expecting to see one of the masked figures, but there was nothing, asterisk, nothing, asterisk, except a pile of discarded items, strewn haphazardly on the floor. A few old clothes, some broken electronics, a torn shopping bag, but nothing that should have been there. And then I heard it again. The scraping. That same dragging sound from earlier, louder this time, closer, like it was coming from inside the store itself. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. The sound was relentless, each scrape like nails on a chalkboard, each second stretching out like hours. I spun around, desperate to see what was causing it, but nothing was there. The aisles were still, silent. Then, as I stared into the darkened aisle, a figure stepped forward. It wasn't one of the masked people. No, this one was different. It was much taller, too tall for a human, and its limbs were elongated, bent at unnatural angles. Its head was too small for its body, like a grotesque puppet that had been made wrong, and its face was a black void, with no features, just a smooth, featureless surface. It was as if the store itself had created this thing, as if it were birthed from the darkness around me. I took a step back, but the thing moved too quickly, its long arms reaching out toward me. The floor beneath me groaned in protest, the walls trembling like they were alive, pressing in closer. The air grew colder, thick with an oppressive energy, and I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. But it wasn't the thing's face that terrified me, it was what I could feel behind it. More figures. Hundreds of them. They were coming from all directions, appearing out of the shadows, out of the walls, from under the shelves, their bodies twisted and contorted, their heads tilted at impossible angles. Each one was silent, but I could hear them, feel them in my bones, their presence suffocating. The whole store was alive, alive with something ancient, something hungry. Asterisk, you're ours. Asterisk, the voice echoed in my mind. Asterisk, all of you. Asterisk, the figure in front of me reached out, its long, bony fingers closing in around my wrist. Its touch was ice cold, freezing, but it didn't hurt, it felt wrong, like the hand wasn't even real, like it belonged to something that had never been human. I tried to pull away, but the grip was too strong. You can't escape, the voice whispered again. Asterisk, this is your place now. This is where you belong. Asterisk, I fought, struggling to break free, but the darkness was too strong, pressing in on all sides, suffocating me. My vision blurred, and the room seemed to tilt, spinning around me. The walls closed in, the shadows reached for me, and the figures were all around me, their hands grabbing at me, pulling me, dragging me deeper into the store's heart. And then, I saw it. A doorway. A small, faint light shining from the crack of a door at the back of the store. It was too far. I could barely see it, but it was there. A way out? Without thinking, I broke free from the figure's grip and ran. I didn't care about the pain in my legs, the way my head spun as I moved. I ran. The figures were chasing me now, their long, distorted limbs reaching for me, but I didn't look back. I could hear their footsteps, their unnatural shuffling, their whispers growing louder and louder. Asterisk, you can't leave. You belong here. Asterisk, I reached the door, my hand shaking as I gripped the handle, but it wouldn't open. The door was locked, or maybe it was just another illusion, another trap set by the store. But I didn't stop. I slammed my body into the door, again and again, feeling though it would crack beneath the force of my blows. My heart was racing, the sounds of the figures growing louder, closer. I could feel their cold hands on my back, their breath on my neck. But I wouldn't stop. I couldn't stop. Finally, with a deafening crack, the door flew open, and I stumbled into the light beyond. But it wasn't the light I had hoped for. Beyond the door was more darkness. An endless void, stretching out into the horizon, like a chasm that had no end. And in the distance, I could see them. The figures. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them, standing, waiting, staring at me with their empty, soulless eyes. I had run into the heart of the nightmare. And now, there was no way out. To be continued. The door slammed shut behind me, cutting off the last shred of light from the store. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest, gasping for air as the shadows closed in on all sides. The air felt heavy now, thick with a weight that pressed down on my lungs, suffocating me, making it harder to breathe. My surroundings were a void, an endless, yawning blackness stretching out in every direction, with no walls, no ceiling, no floor to speak of, only darkness and the faintest tremor of movement in the distance. I couldn't see where I was going. The light that had shone from the crack of the door was gone, and now there was only silence. The kind of silence that's so absolute, it feels like it's pressing against your ears, drowning out the sound of your own breath. But I wasn't alone, I could feel it, the presence. Something else was here with me, lurking just beyond the edges of my vision, watching, waiting. The oppressive feeling was so thick I could almost taste it, like the air had turned to lead, heavy and suffocating. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, but my chest felt tight, and my legs wobbled beneath me. My mind raced, searching for any logical explanation, anything to hold on to, but there was nothing. Only the deepening darkness, and the whispers that had started again. At first, they were faint, barely audible, like the distant murmur of wind through trees, but then they grew louder. Closer. I could hear them, voices, but they didn't sound human. They were guttural, distorted, like they were coming from something not quite alive. "She's here," one whispered, the voice rough and rasping, like dry leaves scraping against the ground. "She's part of us now." I froze. The words echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull, vibrating through my very bones. Another voice joined in. "She will stay. Forever." I tried to move, but my legs felt like they were stuck to the ground, as if the very shadows were pulling me down, holding me in place. I tried to scream, but no sound came out, only a strangled gasp escaped my throat, as if the darkness had stolen my voice. Suddenly, a cold wind rushed past me, its icy touch sliding down my skin, and I whipped around, my eyes straining to make out anything in the inky blackness. There was something there, something moving, but it was too fast to see. I felt a sharp tug on my sleeve, like fingers grazing my arm, but when I turned, there was no one there. I gasped, my heart hammering in my chest. I had to move. I had to get away from whatever was in this void with me. I stumbled forward, my hands outstretched, trying to find something, anything, solid to grasp onto. But there was nothing. Only endless darkness. The whispers had grown louder now, frantic, overlapping each other, like 1,000 voices all speaking at once. They were inside my head now, swirling around in a chaotic buzz that made it impossible to focus, to think clearly. It's too late. The voice from earlier, the deep, rasping one, whispered again, but this time, I could feel it in my chest, vibrating in my rib cage. You've already crossed the line. You're one of us now. I tried to move faster, but the air seemed to grow thicker, heavier. Each step I took felt like I was walking through mud. My feet dragged across the cold, slick ground, but I couldn't tell where I was going. The sound of dragging feet. I heard it again. It was behind me now. Slow, deliberate steps, like something was following me. Something, close. Too close. I whipped around, heart leaping into my throat, but there was nothing. Just the endless stretch of darkness. No sound. No movement. But the presence, the feeling, was undeniable. I could feel its cold breath on my skin, its eyes boring into me. I wasn't alone. I started to run. My legs burned as I pushed myself forward, but with each step, the shadows seemed to grow, reaching for me, closing in on me. I could hear the dragging footsteps again, louder now, as though whatever was behind me was gaining on me. I didn't dare look back, I couldn't. If I did, I knew I wouldn't be able to keep running. The ground beneath my feet shifted. The darkness seemed to warp and bend, and I suddenly found myself tumbling into a pit, falling into the unknown, down, 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 like a rag doll thrown into an abyss. I screamed, but my voice was lost in the void, swallowed by the darkness. The walls around me seemed to close in, narrowing, compressing. I hit the ground with a sickening thud, my head spinning as I struggled to rise.